Today, my friends, I come bearing fantastic news. When I first heard about this, one of you guys actually tweeted at me last night. I was buzzing. I couldn't go to sleep. I was so excited. We're here to talk about Gen 2 within Pokemon Go. Now, for a lot of people, Gen 1 was really the one that caught their Pokemon addiction. They loved it. And as much as I love Gen 1, it was actually Gen 2 that transitioned me into being such a Pokemon addict that I am now and was back in the day. So for me, Gen 2 is utterly exciting and so amazing. So for those of you guys who watched my previous Pokemon Go video, you know I mentioned that an update will be coming soon, which is actually out now for Pokemon Go, that will give you daily bonuses for capturing Pokemon and will give you a bigger bonus on the 7th day of consecutively getting that bonus, but also for hitting Pokestops. And that update has now gone live, and a few things have changed in the game. One is that Pokespawners seem to be crazy, like Pokemon are spawning in great numbers, and also the drops that you get from Pokestops have been insane. People have been tweeting me 13, 14, 15 drops from Pokestops, so go out there and hit them up because they are amazing right now. But on top of that, within the coding of the game, the Gen 2 Pokemon, so that's Pokemon 152, all the way to 251, are now within the game. Now, obviously, this is very exciting, and it means we're getting one step closer to Gen 2 being added into Pokemon Go, and I think that's why so many more Pokemon are spawning right now. I also noticed additional spawn spots popping up over the Halloween update, and in one of my previous videos, I mentioned that if they want to introduce Gen 2, they either have to introduce new spawn spots to make the spawning equal amongst Gen 1 and Gen 2, or try and squeeze everything into what we've got at the moment. And I think they're testing out those additional spawn spots, getting ready for Gen 2, which is very exciting. However, it's worth noting that although Gen 2 are now coded into the game, their movesets are not. So Gen 2 isn't just going to suddenly hit us tomorrow, for example. We still need to have the game updated fully for the Pokemon to spawn in, and the servers for Pokemon Go also need to be updated for the Pokemon to spawn in. So we're not quite there. Gen 2, though, however, is definitely closer than it was a few days ago. So you're probably thinking, that's great, Ali, Gen 2's closer, good stuff, but what about it? Well, today, we're going to be looking at the CP maxes for all of Gen 2 Pokemon. There's actually an algorithm behind working out the CP max for Pokemon. It takes into account their attack, their defense, their HP stat, and using all of those numbers, you can actually work it out. So we're going to be having a look at all of the CP maximums for Gen 2 Pokemon, also seeing how they compare to some Gen 1 Pokemon, because Pokemon like Dragonite may be getting beaten out as one of the best non-legendary Pokemon to have a huge CP potential. So let's not waste any more time, let's take a look at these numbers. So, kicking it off with the first few Pokemon in Gen 2, we've got Chikorita, Bailiff, and Meganium. Meganium capping out at around 2,484. Now, these numbers aren't official, but they are going to be extremely close to the actual numbers that will be used in-game when Gen 2 come around. So that's great, but obviously you want to compare them to the other starters in Gen 2. So we've got Cyndaquil, Quilava, and Typhlosion. Typhlosion coming out to 2,602, so being a little bit higher than Meganium. However, my favourite starter in Gen 2 is always Totodile, and he evolves from Totodile to Croconaw to Frealigator, who I adore with his big slash move set. You can teach him Surf, Hydro Pump, I love him. Frealigator comes out on top at 2,678. So CP maximum, Frealigator comes out on top out of all the starting Pokemon in Gen 2. Just to compare them to the Gen 1 starters as well. Venusaur against Meganium. Venusaur has a little bit higher CP max. Typhlosion against Charizard are almost equal. They both have really high CP maximums. But then Frealigator against Blastoise. Frealigator beats out Blastoise and is the strongest starting Pokemon CP maximums out of both Gen 1 and Gen 2. So now we start getting into the more common Gen 2 Pokemon. We've got Sentret, Farret, we've got Hoot and Noctowl. None of these guys even going over the 2,000 CP threshold. And then poor little Ladybird and Ladian, they only cap out at 1,136. That's terrible. That's like Diglett level terrible. Not very good at all. We've also got Spinark and Arados coming in as well, who are definitely better than poor Ladian. And then we've got Crobat, which is very exciting. Crobat obviously evolving from Golbat. I've been telling you guys to save your Zubat candies. And Crobat can go up to 2,000 348. Now, Golbat's maximum CP is around 1,921, so he's now been pushed above that 2,000 CP threshold, and honestly, Crobat is going to be a force to be reckoned with in Pokemon Go when Gen 2 comes out. On top of that, we've got Chinchou and Lantern. That goes over 2,000 CP, so great job there. And then we've got a few baby Pokemon, which is very exciting. We've got Clefairy, Igglybuff, and Togepi. These guys obviously have tiny CP maximums because they're like pre-evolutions of Pokemon we've already got in Gen 1. But they're super cute, not very strong at all, and we're still waiting for breeding to be introduced. And I'm pretty sure that once breeding gets introduced, that'll be how we get the baby Pokemon in Gen 2. We then got Togetic, that evolves from Togepi. We've got Natu and X-Atu, who just goes over 2,000 CP. I like those guys. I think they're really cool psychic Pokemon. And then, one of my favourite Pokemon ever, being an electric Pokemon from Gen 2, is the Mareep, Flaffy, and Ampharos evolution train. They are very strong, with Ampharos going all the way up to 2,618. A super strong Pokemon that is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. And honestly, when Gen 2 starts spawning in, I am going to grind so hard for those Mareep candies, because it's going to be one of those evolutions I really want to get. Next added in is Blossom, coming in at around 2,394. Now, this is an interesting evolution chain because it's an optional evolution from Gloom from the Oddish evolution. So from Gloom you can now go to Vileplume or Blossom, and actually Vileplume has a higher CP maximum than Blossom, so technically if you're just looking at CP range, Vileplume's always going to be stronger, but for a new Pokemon we've got Blossom, just a little bit weaker. On top of that, we've now got Marill and Azumarill. These guys not quite getting close to 2,000 CP, unfortunately. I definitely thought he was deserving of over 2,000 CP. Azumarill's got a lot of HP. He's a big, tanky Pokemon, but unfortunately not. Next up, we've got Sudowoodo, who you always have to pour a little bit of water over in Pokemon Gold and Silver to get him to move into battle. Not too strong. Next up, a very cool evolution, a form of Politide, who comes out at 2,460. So this guy can evolve from Poliwhirl. So rather than getting Poliwrath, you're getting Politoed instead, which means that, which one's going to be stronger? Poliwrath actually comes out a little bit stronger, 2,505, whereas Politoed is at 2,460. So again, the first gen Pokemon beating out the new optional evolutions for Gen 2, but it's still a very cool new Pokemon. You've got a freaking Toad in your party, you know what I mean? It looks awesome. Next up, we've got a few quite weak Pokemon. We've got Hoppip, Skiploom, and Jumpluff. Jumpluff only coming out at 1,607, so not too competitive or strong, but it's all good. Apom coming out at 1,160 is pretty shocking, poor guy. Next up, we've got Sunkern, that can evolve into Sunflora, which does go over 2,000, coming out 2,079, so a good grass-type Pokemon there for sure. Yanmar comes out at 1,471. Wooper evolves into Quagsire, who does go over 2,000. I think this CP is closer to what poor Azumarill should have got, but Quagsire can go up to 2,070. And then we've got the new Eevee evolutions, alright, in the form of Espeon and Umbreon. So I don't know what to think about these guys. I adore both Espeon and Umbreon. If any of you guys played Pokemon Colosseum, I think it was on GameCube, I played that to death. You got both Espeon and Umbreon as a starting Pokemon. Pretty unique, but very cool. These guys only have a CP of 2,252 and 2,311. If we go back to Gen 1 and compare that to Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, that only beats out Jolteon. Vaporeon and Flareon have a far higher CP maximum. So poor Espeon and Umbreon there aren't going to be as strong as the other guys really in Gen 1. They're still going to be really cool. I love Espeon. I hate the fact that its CP maximum is worse than Umbreon, but it is what it is. I'm still really excited for them, and keep on saving your Eevee candies for those guys. Next up, we've got Murkrow at 1,622, but another boss Pokemon coming in the form of Slowking. His CP maximum is 2,597, which is actually exactly the same as Slowbro at 2,597. So a new Pokemon evolution for Slowpoke. Both of them are identical CP-wise, but hey, he's got a freaking Shelder on his head. He's pretty awesome. So now we start getting into some really cool Pokemon. We've got Mischievous, who I really love. Took me a while to find that one in Pokemon Gold and Silver. 1,700. All the unknowns are going to be about 1,272. Obviously, unknown covers the span of the alphabet and also exclamation mark and question mark. And whether they're going to add all of those variations in, we'll have to see. But if they do, That's a lot of unknowns to capture. Wobbuffet coming in at 1,380. We've also got Giraffig just going over 2,000 at 2,015. Pineco is very weak, only 926, but he evolves into Fortress at 2,039. Little Dunsparce comes in at 1,905. Gligar, 1,432. And then, whew, do you guys know what's coming up next? If you know your Gen 2 Pokemon, you'll know it is Steelix at 2,080. Honestly, I was hoping he'd have a far bigger CP maximum than this, but it's still cool. I still really want to get a Steelix. This guy will be a load of fun to evolve. We don't know how you're going to be able to evolve it yet. Obviously, you need a steel coat in the actual Pokemon games. Whether they'll add that in as an additional item when Gen 2 comes out, we'll have to wait and see. On top of that, we've got Snubbull and Gramble. Gramble coming out at 2,215, so definitely a solid Pokemon. We've got Quillfish at 1,708. And then, adding to the Steel-type Pokemon that were first added into Pokemon Gen 2, we've got Sizzle, that obviously evolves from Scyther. Get your Scyther candy stored up for this evolution. He comes in at 2,270, so a better CP maximum than his brother Steelix. So this guy's pretty good. I want to get both of them for sure. Shuckle is utterly atrocious at 395, the poor thing. Not going to be used for almost anything apart from just adding him to your Pokedex. Heracross, an absolute monster in physical attacking. He is very, very strong. He's got a CP of 2,060. I cannot wait to get him. He's a beast in the Pokemon games, and hopefully he's going to have a beast moveset in Pokemon Go as well. We've also got Sneasel at 1,354. Teddiursa and Urazing coming in at 2,648. That is huge. Get all of those Teddiursa candies stored up, because you're definitely going to want that evolution for sure. That rivals almost Dragonite as well. It's huge. We've also got Slugma and Macargo at 1,523. Swinub and Pillow-Swine goes over just 2,000 at 2,189, so still very good. Corsola has 1,440 CP maximum, and Remoraid, who evolves into Octillery, has 2,565. That is huge. That is seriously, seriously big. There's a lot of hard-hitting, high CP Pokemon coming in Gen 2. Delibird, who delivers presents as an attack in the Pokemon games, has 1,071 CP, so not great, unfortunately. Mantine, 1,650. Skarmory, who's an awesome flying steel Pokemon, 1,650, which is fantastic. And another evolution chain that I adore, Houndour and Houndoom coming in at 2,371. This is like the Growlithe evolution chain, except the maximum CP isn't quite as high. But Houndoom is going to be big. I'm going to want those Houndour candies for sure. That is very exciting. Now, a brand new Pokemon that evolves from a Gen 1 Pokemon in the form of Kingdra is 2,671. That's massive. Seadra is pre-evolution, is capped at 1,713. So, Kingdra is going to make a huge difference to that evolution chain. And it's going to be a very competitive Pokemon for sure. We've got the Fanfy to Dolphin evolution at 2,448. Very strong. I'm just looking at the next one here. Oh my days. Porygon2. 2,653 is utterly insane. Porygon only caps out at 1,000, about 1,700. So the Porygon2 evolution comes in and smashes it and makes him utterly huge. Standler comes in at 2,141, not bad. We then got Tyrogue, which is a pre-evolution of both Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, and then Hitmontop, who's an optional evolution then for Tyrogue. So Tyrogue is obviously a baby Pokemon, very weak, 550. Hitmontop coming in at 1,515. How does that compare to both Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan? He actually comes out just in the middle of Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, so, you know, nothing crazy there. We then got some really cool pre-evolutions for Smoochum, Elekid, and Magby that evolve into Jinx, also Electabuzz, and then finally Magmar. For a baby Pokemon, Magby coming in at 1,270 is actually pretty crazy, but Magmar has a CP max of 2,265, so you'd expect that baby Pokemon to have a decent CP, but those guys are going to be very fun to get for sure. Coming towards the end of the list here, guys, we've got Miltank, who doesn't quite reach 2,000, unfortunately, 1,917. Blissey, I hate this, but the CP is only 1,234. You guys may know I did a whole episode with a Chansey because it has very low CP, but huge. I think #1 in Gen 2. huge HP. It's massive. Chansey caps out at 675, so Blissey at 1234 could make it viable for gyms. It's like a really good defender, like a very good defender. I'll have to test it out. We're now moving into the legendaries with Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, which are the legendary dogs. The best one out of these guys is Entei at 3,262. The other guys are almost at 3,000, not quite. However, how do these guys compare to the legendary birds? Well, 2 of the legendary birds go over 3,000. That's a Zapdos and Moltres. So these guys are similar, but really a little bit weaker overall than the first gen legendaries, but still extremely cool. We don't even have first gen legendaries yet, just saying, but those really will be the CP maximums for them. And then my favorite evolution chain, arguably in the whole of Pokemon. I adore these guys. We've got Larvitar, Pupitar, and Tyranitar. Tyranitar he's my man. I love him so much. When I first got a Larvitar that was decent in Gen 2, I'd go to Victory Road, I'd battle against wild Pokemon, because you couldn't re-battle against trainers, to get all the way up to Tyranitar, which is like a level 55 evolution. He was huge. Tyranitar has a maximum CP of 3,653, guys. Can we just appreciate that for a second? Absolutely insane. I know what you're all thinking though. How does that compare to Dragonite? Dragonite, 3,500. My boy Tyranitar is, aside from the legendaries, the highest CP Pokemon in the game. I don't have Dragonite quite yet, so getting Tyranitar will be so hard, I'm sure, when Gen 2 comes out. But I want this guy so bad. He comes in, he sweeps the CPs away of all the Gen 1 Pokemon. He is amazing. I love him, I love him, I love him. The final few Pokemon that are legendaries in Gen 2, we've got Lugia coming in at 3,613. Ho-Ho coming in at 4,213. And finally, Celebi at 3,299. How do Lugia and Ho-Oh compare against Mewtwo and Mew? Well, Lugia and Ho-Oh destroy Mewtwo and Mew, actually, beating out both of them, which is pretty damn impressive. And I believe that makes Ho-Oh the highest CP maximum Pokemon in the whole of Pokemon Gen 1 and 2 once it releases. So, that was very fun. It took a lot longer to go through all of them than I thought it would, but it is so exciting. We're still waiting on Gen 1 legendaries, obviously, but we are a step closer now to Gen 2 Pokemon coming out, and those would be, on average, the CP maximums we'll be getting for all of the Gen 2 Pokemon. Leave a comment down below which is your favourite Gen 2 Pokemon, which are you most excited to get. Mine, I mean, there's so many. It's going to be Tyranitar, but I also love Steelix and Sizzle. I love all of them. I love all of them. So, guys, stay here and keep updated for Gen 2 news. I've got loads of cool new videos for you guys for Pokemon Go that I'm very excited to record. So if you guys have really enjoyed, thank you very much for watching, and I'll be seeing you guys next time with more videos.